Welcome to the Expansive Astrology Podcast, where we look at using astrology beyond the tropes and horoscopes to tune into the natural forces around us and within us, honoring our true nature to craft our future. I'm your host, Melissa, the Self-Care Witch, and I'm here to help you meet your magic. Without further ado, let's begin this week's episode with a tarot reading for the collective. Hello. Welcome back to the Expansive Astrology Podcast. It's episode 10. We are wrapping up Cancer season and preparing to step into Leo season. So we have a great episode today in honor of all of that, and also a full moon in Capricorn. While we're at it, let's go ahead and have a little full moon in Capricorn while we're at it. But before we get into the expansive astrology, first things first, let's see what the tarot cards have for us this week. This is a reading for the collective, so remember, take what you need and leave the rest. If it doesn't all totally resonate with you, that's kind of to be expected. And also, stay open to seeing how this might play out for you over the coming week. All right. Okay. Okay. I think I've gotten some of these cards before. I know I've gotten the Queen of Pentacles for us before, and the Queen of Pentacles is what's present for us this week. The Queen of Earth, the expert of utilizing her resources for her greatest good, which ultimately also is like the greatest good of her whole little kingdom or her whole big kingdom. The Queen of Pentacles reminds us to utilize our resources, to resource ourselves. She's an expert at self-care. She is all about cultivating the ability to tend, to hold space, to heal. The Queen of Pentacles reminds us the importance of tending to ourselves, of tending to the part of ourselves that's totally burnt out and exhausted. Like, that's her whole thing. That's her life. Again and again and again, returning to what is nourishing. She reminds us and permissions us to serve ourselves so that we can show up to serve others. But it has to start with us. So she represents connecting with our resources, connecting with our pentacles, and making the most out of each drink of water, finding nourishment out of everything that she possibly can. It's like self-care central. She's all about the self-care that is infused into her everyday life. Like, she's about all that self-care and resourcing and nourishment and tending that is the foundation of how she leads. It's the foundation of everything that she brings forward to the world. And it's such a personal inner journey that nobody else can permission her to do or tell her how to do. She's about that self-care that other people might never understand or be witness to. But it's the basis of her whole world. So can you play dress up with the Queen of Pentacles? How can you emulate that in your life? How can you align yourself and your life and the way you're showing up in life just a little bit more with that idea? Knowing that this is the foundation of everything else that we do. So our brain comes up with all kinds of reasons to skimp on these things and put these things last. And we convince ourselves that it's all, you know, uh, extra. We have to earn it, or that we can't afford to take the time or the money to tend ourselves, resource ourselves. Don't skimp on this. This archetype, the Queen of Pentacles, is here to nurture the vessel, to tend to our bodies by connecting us to the supportive nature of the pentacles, of what is available to us. And that queen is supported by the 10 of Wands. So we're kind of being asked to look at what we're engaging with. Look at what we've been working on or collecting or working toward, looking at our resources, kind of looking at what's on our plate and evaluating, like picking our head up from our work, picking our head out of it, and reevaluating, looking at if are there any, the being in the card has 10 wands, 10 big old wands that they've been collecting for who knows how long. Each of these wands is important. They all represent something, right? And when we get to the 10, we're asked to evaluate which of these wands is still serving us. Are there any that we can like delegate or pass on to somebody else to hold? Or are there any that we just need to put down and like get out of our arms altogether? Is there a way for us to carry all of these wands that is a little easier on the back? Just kind of looking at what are we engaging with, what have we had our nose in, and is there anything that we need to do that will make that more aligned for us? Or is there anything we need to do that will help make our Queen of Pentacles experience a little more nourishing or a little easier to lean into? Is there anything that needs to be reevaluated, redistributed, rearranged, or left behind? And I know for me, sometimes I'll pull the 10 of Wands when like I can't see that. Like I can't see the answer. Like I'll pull the 10 of Wands when I am so in it, like so in my work or so in my thoughts or my idea of how things should be. Like sometimes I'll pull the 10 of Wands when I can't lift my head and see past my damn wands, in which case it's kind of a signal to me to maybe bring in an outside opinion, somebody outside of my little head to tell me what is going on outside of these wands that I'm not able to see right now. But when we are able to do that, when we're able to move out of the 10 of Wands and take care of this problem, we move into the page. We move into the court cards. We move into the Page of Wands, who has a very knowing and devoted and healthy, helpful, aligned relationship with the wand. So what's present for us is the Queen of Pentacles, asking us to tend to ourselves, caretake ourselves, resource ourselves, and that's supported by the 10 of Wands. Just a reminder to make sure that we're engaging with what we need to be engaging with, that we're using our fire in the most healthy and effective way possible. Our lesson, given all of that, is the 6 of Wands, who you've heard me talk about this before. I really like this card. This card says to be proud of yourself, to like to honor how far you've come, to throw yourself a little victory party, whether anybody else is on board or not. Like, this is for you, from you. The Six of Wands is about like lifting yourself up, acknowledging how hard you've worked, how much you know, lifting yourself up and letting yourself celebrate and be celebrated, letting yourself see your hard work and be seen. But it's not about that. Don't let it be about being seen. And don't wait for the townspeople to throw you a parade, because that might never happen. The lesson is the Six of Wands. How can you engage with pride? How can you be proud of yourself, even if nobody outside of you can permission that the way you can permission that? No amount, the townspeople could throw you a whole ass parade and you still might not feel deserving of it. So, either way, it has to come from you. You have to be willing to celebrate yourself and to lean into healthy pride. Gosh, so many of us are taught that pride is a sin. Remember when pride was a sin? I mean, with peace and love, that's bullshit. There's a way to be proud that isn't harmful, right? There's a way to be proud that isn't like narcissistic. Like, I don't know. It's bullshit. That's bullshit. And so many of us have like a complex around it. We don't know how to feel proud or like, ugh, it's so frustrating. Like, geez, life is hard enough. Like, you deserve to celebrate yourself. You deserve to know how and when to feel proud of yourself, yay. So, sweet love, that's your lesson for this week. And it's not about waiting for any, like, you're invited to be with that today, now. Not waiting for anybody else to celebrate you. Not waiting for you to reach some sort of destination or end goal or milestone. Like, doing it now. Honoring how far you've come and how much you know and how incredible and talented and unique and special and magical you are now. So don't miss any opportunities to do that. In fact, can you challenge yourself to do that like right now as you're listening to this podcast? Can you like share a win to your social media, like tweet something that you're proud of or that you're grateful for, share it to your stories or something. Even if it feels small, I think marrying this message with an action can be really important. So like, prove it. This is your lesson for the week. Can you really lean into that? And don't miss any opportunities to lean into that, to lean into like lifting yourself up in a really healthy way, right? Can you share something that you're proud of with the world? And if you're not a social media type of person, like, and it doesn't align with you to, boast about something on your social media, I can honor that. But so then can you do it for yourself? As cheesy as it might feel, like, really just sit with yourself and feel proud. Or, share something with your therapist or your mom or your spouse or your best friend or whatever. But like, don't just hear my words right now and be like, oh yes, that's the lesson for the week. Like, hear my words and do something about it, like right now. And if you do share a win or something that you're proud of on your social media, tag me. I want to celebrate you too. Or hashtag expansive astrology. Like, I want to celebrate you and let's celebrate each other. But first, it has to come from you for you. Okay, so that's the lesson. And the anchor is the Three of Swords. I feel like we've had a very similar spread to this. Like maybe last week or the week before last. It doesn't matter, but I think like 2 or 3 of these cards came up with each other recently. It's interesting. The Three of Swords is when we're like adding insult to injury, or when we're kind of making our heartbreak worse with our thoughts, with our brain, by the way that we're engaging with our brain or the way that we're thinking about our pain. So in the Three of Swords, we're reminded of the importance of stopping, shutting the brain up with peace and love, with all due respect. Shut up. And pull the swords out of it. Pull the thoughts out of it. You can't think your way out of heartbreak. So it's time to stop trying. And any ways that our thoughts are like adding swords to the heart, you're invited to just look at that, pay attention to that, notice if that's happening, and to the best, like try stop, see if you can get some support around that, or take a break from thinking so damn much. Pull the swords out of the heart and just like put your hands to the wounds to stop the bleeding, tend to your heart. Again, you can't think your way out of this pain or any grief or heartache that might be happening. All we can do is tend to it. And some examples of the ways that we add swords to the heart, we add insult to injury when we're like, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be past this. When our brain says things like, this is my fault. I always make things worse. La-di-da, like, geez, our brain, like, there's a million ways that the brain adds swords to the heart. Like, yikes. And we move from the Three of Swords to the Four of Swords, which is about finding like an energetic separation between our thoughts and ourself. Like the Four of Swords, we're finding rest. We're not bypassing or suppressing or trying to get rid of our swords, but we're learning how to be in a relationship with our swords where there's definition or separation between the being and the swords. But in order to get there, we have to move through this Three of Swords and kind of master this idea of pulling the swords out of the heart, pulling the thoughts out of the heart, making sure that the way we're thinking about a thing isn't actually making our pain worse. So our anchor for the week is inviting us to befriend the mind and utilize the mind in a way that is actually helpful and caretaking and nourishing for our sweet wounded heart. Our lesson asks us to engage with feelings of pride in the most healthy and aligned ways possible, but feeling proud of yourself, celebrating yourself, and letting yourself be celebrated. And what's present for us this week is an invitation to step into the Queen of Pentacles, nurture and nourish and resource ourselves, caretake ourselves. And that's supported by the Ten of Wands, which has us looking at how we're utilizing our fire and making sure that we're not burning ourselves out on anything that isn't like helpful, useful, aligned, and meant for us. Overall, there's like this vibe of really caretaking the caretaker. So I hope that that's useful for you as we move into the coming week. This is the last week of Cancer season. The sun enters Leo on the 22nd. So let's talk about the expanse of astrology and how we can squeeze the most out of this last week of Cancer season before moving into Leo energy. So Cancer is so many beautiful things, right? Like even just thinking about like what we've talked about the past few weeks on this podcast. just so juicy and like more self knowledge, self awareness, and self love is never a bad thing. It's, I think, so many of us need to strengthen our relationship with like Cancer energy, with nurturing and mothering, if that word resonates with you. Uh, Deep, gentle caretaking and self acceptance and home, like cultivating home and security and comfort. I just think of how truly freaking paradigm shifting it would be if more people did this kind of work and tapped in with empowered Cancer energy, divine feminine energy. It's healing. It's truly healing. The work that Cancer brings, the invitations that Cancer brings, is so foundational for the whole rest of the year. And Cancer is a cardinal sign. And the cardinal signs shake things up. The cardinal signs affect change. The cardinal signs are the ones that they're the movers and the shakers. They welcome in new seasons. They create change. And we're going to speak about that more, in our discussion about the Chariot. And we're really learning what it is to know ourselves, love ourselves, to understand where we're coming from, understand our defenses and how to use them wisely, understanding how to be protected while also letting love in. This is so important. And Cancer rules the Chariot in the tarot, and the Chariot completes the first line of the major arcana, where we've moved from the Fool into the Magician, and then the High Priestess, and then the Empress, and the Emperor, and the Hierophant, and the Lovers. Like, we've moved through all of these cards, and now we're in the Chariot, and once we learn all there is to learn in the Chariot, we move into the Strength card, which is ruled by Leo, which is next season. So Cancer, the Chariot, the idea of a cardinal sign. There's like a very clear invitation to me that we've been doing all of this work, really from the start of the astrological year in mid-March with Aries, the newborn, who comes in and takes up space like the emperor. We learn how to take up space and use our birthright to take up space, and we're learning our voice and how to do so in an empowered way that doesn't crowd anybody else out in Aries. And then we move into Taurus, where we're cultivating that space to create safety, security, and pleasure. And then we move into Gemini, which the phrase is I think. And we're learning how to use our voice, how to make connections, how to communicate, how we get our needs met in the world. And now we're in Cancer, where the culmination of all of that work, we're kind of assessing, like really knowing ourselves, knowing why and how we tick, how we operate and why, what we defend and why and how, and whether those defenses are healthy and in alignment. And then ultimately we step out of the Chariot. We do all of this work in Cancer, and we decide what does work and what doesn't work for us. What is going to keep us moving? What do we need to leave behind in order to move into the Strength card, the next card? I had hermit crabs as a kid, which, if you didn't know, it's actually really like morally unethical to have hermit crabs as pets. Like, I won't really go into all of that, but that's something I didn't know. And they're really, really cool. They're like really cool. They're super cool, but it's actually like really terrible the way that we have captured them and created, turned them into a pet. It's really unnatural for them and terrible for them. But anyway, that's not the point. No judgment. That's not the point. They're really fun to have. But I remember, like, oh, I so wanted to see my little guys. I think they were called Herman and Shelley. Uh, I wanted to witness them change shells so badly. I thought it was so cool. And if you've never Googled what a hermit crab looks like underneath that shell, yikes. Anyway, Cancer is the crab, and hermit crabs are it's just the perfect illustration of the chariot, actually. The hermit crab is not its shell. The shell is an integral part of it. It's like totally, completely necessary for the hermit crab, right? And the crab is so much more than the shell. And the crab knows when it's outgrown its shell. The crab knows when it's time to move into a new shell. It has no choice. It has to. It has to honor its process of outgrowing and moving shells, which is a dangerous process for it. Those even just a few seconds, right? A hermit crab is an expert of moving from one shell to the other. It's pretty cool. And even in those few moments, like this, it's risking its life moving from one shell to the other. It's so vulnerable in that moment. And it doesn't know what that new shell is going to be like until it's in it. So, like, it's risking its life, it's risking everything to move into something new. It doesn't even know if it's going to be the right shell for it, but it does know what isn't working for it anymore. Cancer rules the chariot. And we're not talking about the charioteer. We're talking about the chariot. So before we move into Leo season, we're doing like a deep and thorough review of who we are and how far we've come. And we get to choose. We get to choose what is coming with us and what we're outgrowing. Do we want to stay in this chariot? Do we want to stay in this crusty old shell? This crusty old shell that we've made into home? And it doesn't have to be like all or nothing also. For the hermit crab, it is. And when we're talking about a literal chariot and stepping out of a chariot, like, yes, right? And most things are not that black or white. So just remember that, like, you can always go back. You could, maybe. some it depends, of course, but don't fear this process, or don't let fear stop you from engaging in this process. I want to emphasize again, like, we move out of the chariot into strength. We can't approach the lion in the strength guard from our chariot. We have to know when we've gone as far as we can go in this chariot. So as I'm saying all of this, there might be something really obvious that's like standing out to you and resonating, and it's like, yes, I need to leave this relationship behind, or this job behind, or this habit behind. It might be something really obvious and external. And remember, it also might be something really subtle and internal. It could be some like egoic layer, or some way of operating, or some set of beliefs. But either way, before we move into Leo season, and informed by all of this work that we've done so far in Cancer season, are you aware of what you're done with, of what you're outgrowing? Are you courageous enough to do something about it? 10 of Wands vibes too. 10 of Wands is in our collective pull for this week. It's similar idea. What are you holding on to? What are you keeping in your chariot? What are you bringing with you in your shell? Or what do you want to make sure that your new shell is made up of? This is a lifelong work. We're always going to be moving through chariot experiences. We're doing this evaluation and this outgrowing and this moving on and stepping up and out. It's going to happen a million times in our lifetime. So, no need to feel like you have to, get it right this week or something. But what is something that you're ready to leave behind? What is something that needs to get out of your shell so that you can keep expanding? We have to kick those things out of our shell so that we make room to keep growing and expanding. We have to kick those things that aren't working for us out of our chariot so that there's room to bring in the things that will work for us. It's courageous. It's courageous to step out of the chariot. It takes strength. Many people never do it. Many people never do this. Many people stay in the same shell that they were given at birth. And it is a perfectly acceptable way to do this life. It's to stay at home in your shell. Right? That's fine. You can do that too. And we were made to grow. We're made to keep expanding, and growing and outgrowing and transforming and evolving and changing. We are meant to do that. It's natural. So while many people never step out of their chariot, is that what your destiny is? If you're listening to this, I'm going to say no. If you're listening to this, you know that you have the capacity for more or the potential for more. You know that there's more to life than this chariot, right? Dream big, babe. Remember, that hermit crab does not know what this next shell is going to be like. And it does the thing anyway, because that's what's natural for it. So we've looked at who and how we are, what's important to us, what we value, what we defend. What are you bringing with you? What are some non-negotiables for you in order to feel at home? In order for you to feel safe and courageous enough to step outside of your shell, into strength. Because ultimately that's the goal, is to move out of the chariot and into line 2 into strength. So what are your non-negotiables? What needs to come with you? What makes you feel at home? How can you make sure you're continuing to prioritize those things and keep them front and center in your shell, in your chariot, never undermining or underestimating those things as we move forward? If you're going to authorize these things into your chariot, you better mean it. You better keep them polished up. You better keep them like keep them present. We don't want anything in our shell or in our chariot that's kind of going unchecked or unnoticed or untended. You know, we want to stay really present, really conscious, aware of what's coming with us. Honor those things, be with those things. Don't let anything in that's going unchecked. If we're considering the move from Cancer season into Leo season, can you, if we consider that as some sort of like graduation point, what does that mean for you? The transition from Cancer to Leo, we're entering into the second round of 4. So we move from a fire sign into an earth sign, and then into an air sign, and then into a water sign. And that cycle repeats 3 times in 1 year. So we've gone from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer. And that completes our first cycle through the 4 signs. It's a graduation point. We're stepping into Leo season. It can be a whole new start. What are you bringing with you into Leo season? And Leo has us looking at like our heart, our courage, our strengths. So consider that now. Consider that already. What are your strengths? What strengths do you bring to the world when you step out of your chariot? What do you know about loving yourself? What do you know about your innards and your outards? Whatever that means. What do you know about your deepest, most true self? And what do you know about your shell? What have you learned about how you protect yourself and that which is important to you? What have you learned about your defense mechanisms? What have you learned about vulnerability, your willingness for vulnerability? Who do you let into your shell with you? What are the criteria in order for that to happen? How comfortable are you with being seen? How comfortable are you with defending yourself, asserting yourself, getting your needs met? What are your personal strengths? How does that give to your world and to others? And as you move through this last week of Cancer season, just really see if you can make yourself available to what Cancer might be wanting you to learn or know. Keeping yourself really open and available to nurturing your soft and squishy insides, creating home for yourself and for others. But mostly for yourself. First, yourself first. And like your kids, if you have any kids, but like don't stop putting other people first. Stop it. Unless it's your children, obviously. But how can you squeeze every last drop out of Cancer season? Stay really open to learning how Cancer is supporting you in knowing your soft, true, organic, vulnerable self. Knowing that you're safe to be that. Knowing that you know how to protect yourself. And having the wisdom to know what you're outgrowing and what isn't working for you. And how you can go even farther. Drop the dead weight, so that you can go farther. So that you can keep expanding into what you know is possible for you. I always have an affirmation that I sit with in between seasons, or like anytime my brain is afraid of what's next or trying to keep me small and contracted and keep things, the same. I really like this affirmation. I am always expanding into the next best thing. I am always expanding into the next best thing. Because the brain needs to hear that and understand that, because it's kind of easy to talk about these things. Like, it's easy to talk about outgrowing your shell and deciding what needs to come with you and what needs to like be left behind and what isn't working for you. Like, it's kind of a nice conversation to have. And in practice, stepping into empowered Cancer energy, or stepping out of our current chariot into something different and new, stepping, really like embracing the unknown future, and scary stuff. It's hard. It's really hard to manage your defenses and like make sure that you're feeling protected and feeling safe and comfortable and at home, while also making sure that you're not overprotected. Making sure that you're protecting yourself and using your shell in a healthy way that isn't keeping goodness out for the sake of self-protection. Like, oh my God. In practice, flexing those muscles and pushing up against those edges. Oh, yikes. It's hard in our brain when things are hard and when we're expanding and when we're trying to live less egoically and more authentically. Our brain does all sorts of things to try to stop that and keep us small and keep us contracted. It's terrible. It can be. It's also liberating and empowered. And sometimes the process of getting there, the work it takes to get to that empowered, liberated place, can be really intense. And I say all of this from really personal, recent experience where like I'm pretty vulnerable and pretty open, and like my marriage is really like open and organic and like raw, and we're both really spiritual, and like we talk, we are very transparent with each other, and there's always room to grow with that. And this last week, I came up against an edge big time with that, and when we're at an edge like that, and I had a choice of whether to expand into something unknown and heart-centered and vulnerable and honest. My defenses were activated. I was right on the edge of that expansion. I was like at that point of choice where I can choose to clam up and hide in my shell, defend myself, maintain the status quo, or step out of my shell and let this person in to see how soft and vulnerable and scared and squishy I truly am and was, especially in like that moment that was going on. The process of doing that was really difficult and painful, and my brain was bringing me into all sorts of beliefs that I couldn't let him see me more fully, that I didn't deserve it, that he would reject me, that I was too fucked up, like all sorts of garbage our brain brings us into when we're on the verge of that expansion. And I just, I want to touch on my personal experience, because the Cancer invitations are so yummy and juicy and nourishing and beautiful and like soft and squishy. It sounds so lovely. But yikes. Yikes. Moving through that, really leaning into that. It can activate a lot in our ego, a lot in our brain, a lot in our defenses. And when we're activated in the brain, the brain's job is to keep us the same, keep us safe. And what feels safe is what we know. So the brain will keep us feeling vulnerable and isolated to keep us from growing and expanding. It's the brain's like go-to tactic is to keep us feeling vulnerable and isolated and alone and like messed up and incapable. So it's like, imagine if right before the hermit crab, which, I commented before, the hermit crab has no choice. It knows to survive, it has to move from one shell to the next, even though it's like a dangerous transition. It doesn't know what that new shell is going to be like, la la la. It's natural. It has to. Like, that's its whole thing. Like, that's what a hermit crab is all about, right? It's its shtick. But imagine if right before that process, right before that expansion, its little hermit crab brain is telling it, like, you don't deserve that shell. You can't move out of that shell. You're not strong enough to move into that shell. You haven't even outgrown the shell completely. Like, this shell's just fine. Everybody's going to hate that new shell. Or who are you to move out of this shell? Sandy, our next door neighbor, deserves a new shell way before I deserve a shell. This is fine. This is just fine. This is fine. Your mother had a shell just like this her whole life and she never complained. Maybe next week. Things will be better for a move like next week. Maybe I should ask Carl his opinion and base my moving or expanding on that. Because I don't know best for myself. And who knows? Maybe that is what the hermit crab is up against each time it does the thing. And it does the thing. Or it dies. So if your narrative, if your brain is sounding a lot like all of that, you can rest assured that you're on the verge of an expansion. You're on the verge of something new. You're in an area of choice. You get to choose to believe all of that. You get to choose whether or not you're going to make your decisions based on all of that. You always get to decide. So I hope that feels useful and inspiring as we wrap up Cancer season. And next week, we will truly welcome in Leo season. And in the meantime, a brief astrological forecast for you. On Wednesday, the 13th, we have a full supermoon in Capricorn. So we get to play with some Capricorn energy to help us through this Cancer medicine, this Cancer work that we're doing. Capricorn is opposing Cancer. So they're on the same pole, but on opposite sides. So all of these things that we've been working on in Cancer, all of this cultivation, all of this home, all of this tending and nurturing and creating comfort and home for ourselves. Capricorn has like a similar-ish vibe, but like on the other, it's like the other side of that coin. It's the other side of that pole. So Cancer is very internal. It's about like cultivating all of that very internally and inside. And then Capricorn is an earth sign, and it's like it's the goat. So Capricorn, and it is related to the house of career, and its phrases I use, whereas Cancer's phrase is I feel. So we're taking all this work we've done in Cancer and looking at how we kind of like how we externalize that, but it's like how we climb our mountains, how we get things done for ourselves, how we engage with our resources, with the earth, how we use what is available to us to get our needs and our goals met. So Cancer has us looking within the shell, what is important to us, what we're building our life around, what we're bringing into our shell, what we're leaving behind. And then Capricorn helps us to utilize all of that to like climb the mountain, to be the goat, to be the greatest that we possibly can be. With this full supermoon, we get to really bring in Capricorn medicine to help us with our Cancer work. And then 6 months from now, during Capricorn season, we'll have a full moon in Cancer. So while we're working on all of the medicine and themes and invitations that Capricorn brings to us, we'll get to utilize the magic and the medicine of a Cancer full moon to like balance that out and round that out for us. It's so divine and it's really awesome how it all plays out. I just think it's so cool. That's why I love following the moon phases, and really using the moon phases to like structure my goals and how I'm like showing up month to month and really keeping me anchored in with my goals. It's just so good. Anyway, and then the moon goes void on the 14th, right after midnight, until it enters Aquarius at 4:13 in the morning on the 14th. Now, all of these times are Eastern Standard Time, and I will start adding all of these to the show notes. So you should be able to like refer to that. And then it's void again on the 16th from 12:36 a.m. So like first thing on the 16th in the middle of the night, until it enters Pisces at 4:18 a.m. On the 17th, Venus enters Cancer, which seems like a really friendly, lovely place for it to be. On the 18th, the moon is void from 2:43 in the morning until it enters Aries at 7:17 in the morning. And then on the 19th, which is the day of our next episode, but I'll mention it now, Mercury enters Leo and Chiron goes retrograde. That might be something that I like look into, but I want to make sure it's something that you would find useful to hear about. And then remember that you are always invited to join me every other Sunday at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for Moon Meetups. Our next one will be 7/24, and we'll be talking about the new moon in Leo. These happen in person in Fort Collins, Colorado, or online via Zoom. You can find more information on my website, but I would love to have you. I really want to see these things grow. And with that, that's all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored. It's 10 episodes. It's kind of cool. And it's just the beginning. Like, I intend to have hundreds more episodes. So it's kind of cool to celebrate 10, but also I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just the beginning. And thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for being here and helping me grow this and believing in it. I'm so glad that it's useful. I'm so hopeful that it's useful and helpful and inspiring for you. I'm always open to hearing how things are landing for you. If you have any ideas or needs or desires from me, like feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, squeeze every last sweet, nurturing drop out of this Cancer season. And take care. Bye. Now, before you go, let me keep your ear for just a moment. This week's episode is brought to you by www.theselfcarewitch.com, my bread and butter, where you can find more information on my current courses, offerings, and other fun ways to connect with myself and yourself. If you enjoyed this episode and you dig what I'm doing here, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and leave a review. It helps so much. And if you'd like to connect with me, head to theselfcarewitch.com. I'd truly love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.